Welcome ladies and gentlemen to another video in the How to Build series. Today's video will be all about Venti. How can we build him? What's the best kind of Venti we can build? All those questions will be answered here. I want to ask you up front that if you like the content in this video, to leave a like, and if you happen to dislike the video, please tell me why in the comments so I can work on my flaws. If you did like the video, consider subscribing, as I will upload an how to build guide for every character in the game. So without further ado, let's deep dive into the content. For Venti, I will go over his main role, which stats to focus on, which talents to level first, what to wear before AR45 and what to wear after AR45. Venti is a support character first and foremost. He is the very best at what he does, and what he does is the best in the game. Seriously, anyone who knows Venti knows this. If you don't know yet, well, you will find out in this video. Venti is a bow user, which means he can auto attack for physical damage and charge shot for elemental damage. He's an anemo wielder, so he would do anemo damage. When we look at his talents, his skill, the Skyward Sonnet, will create an updraft on the target enemy, dealing anemo damage and launching them in the air. Once launched, they will also fall down slowly. When you hold your skill, he will create an updraft that can shoot up enemies surrounding you, but after ascending to phase 2 and unlocking his Embrace of the Winds talent, you can also use it to become airborne. You can start doing plunge attacks this way, or even better, use it for exploration. Venti's Burst is an exceptionally remarkable talent. He will create a Storm Eye that sucks all enemies into its center, dealing continuous anemo damage. Should someone else in your party, or if the enemies in the epicenter, mix another element into the Storm Eye, it will absorb it and become a Storm Eye of that particular element, and deal damage of that elemental type. Since it comes into contact with another element this way, Venti will perform many swirl reactions. When ascending to phase 4, Venti regenerates 15 energy after his burst ends. When an elemental absorption happens, note that it's not a reaction, so it only happens once each burst. It restores 15 energy of that element to the party. Clearly, the way Venti is designed is to be used to crowd control your enemies into launching them in the air, either to gain energy for the burst or gaining ground. Then, whenever you pop Venti's burst, mix in an element, gather all the enemies in the vicinity, perform lots of swirl reactions, and create a different elemental reaction with your main DPS in that particular party. Since Venti is a support and an anemo user, it would seem obvious to stack energy recharge and anemo damage bonus, but I have a better idea. With Venti's kit, it seems a little more optimal to stack him with elemental mastery, since he will do a lot of swirl reactions. While optimizing substats is in actuality not that important, since using Venti is mostly just for gathering the enemies and finishing them off with your main DPS, it's still nice to do a little more damage with Venti's attacks. Now before I start talking about the builds, I will be talking about swirls and elemental mastery a lot, and I think that you'll also need to know how swirls work. Swirl damage is not based off attack, but only of your character's level. You can see the base damage per level on the screen right now. Your elemental mastery will then add a % damage to that base swirl damage. So there are two ways to build Venti. The first being energy recharge based and most optimal. The flower will be main HP, and secondary will be energy recharge, elemental mastery, attack %, and crit rate. The plume will be exactly the same as the flower. For the sands, the main stat needs to be energy recharge, the secondary elemental mastery, attack %, crit rate, and attack. The goblet needs to be anemo damage, with the secondaries being energy recharge, elemental mastery, attack %, and crit rate. And the circlet needs to be elemental mastery, and the secondary needs to be energy recharge, attack %, crit rate, and attack. For your weapon, I would choose the stringless for extra elemental mastery and extra damage for skill and burst. If this weapon is not owned, the Raven Bow also provides an elemental mastery boost. When looking at the substats, always go from top to bottom in priority. The ones stated here are god rules, but a best in slot main stat with only the first of the secondaries is fine to start out with. This build will net you a high amount of swirl damage already due to the inherited elemental mastery from all pieces. You will get your burst back quick due to the high energy recharge, and you will do a lot more damage due to the weapon's refinement and the anemo damage bonus. The only pickle with the anemo damage bonus is when the burst has absorbed an element. The burst will then do damage in that element, but thanks to your elemental mastery stat, you will still do remarkable damage ticks. Why do we prioritize attack and attack %? Well, when you cast your burst, you would also want those damage ticks to be great, right? That's why you can watch out for attack rolls. The swirl itself will not be able to crit, so why stack crit rate? Well, the inherent damage from your burst and skill itself are able to crit, so if they can, they should. If you're not into the full meta but more for the memes like me, you can build them another way. Full elemental mastery. For the flower, with the main HP, secondary elemental mastery, energy recharge, attack %, and crit rate. For the plume, exactly the same as the flower. For the sands, goblet, and circlet, Main stats need to be Elemental Mastery, the secondaries need to be Energy Recharge, Attack percent, Crit rate, and Attack. Your weapon can be the Sacrificial Bow for extra energy recharge and the chance to reset your skill to get your burst up faster. There are no 3-star energy recharge bows, but a Favonius Warbow will also do the trick. In actuality, this build will net you about 200 Elemental Mastery more in an optimized state over the first one's optimized state, so it all depends on the available pieces, of course. Well, every build does, but I digress. The Sacrificial Bow is selected to actually be able to get your burst up faster. Otherwise, with a stringless, our Elemental Mastery would be through the roof, but no way to use it optimally. In any case, this build is super fun to use since you can see high amounts of swirl ticks while knocking away with your main character. Now, there are also ways to build him as a main DPS, but I highly advise against it. But should you still want to, this is what you would want. For your Flower and Plume, secondary stats, Attack percent, Crit rate, Crit damage, and Attack. The Sand's main stat needs to be Attack percent, secondary needs to be Crit rate, Crit damage, Attack, and Energy recharge. The Goblet needs to be Anemo damage, secondary stats Attack percent, Crit rate, Crit damage, and Attack. The Circlet needs to be main stat Crit rate. The secondary Attack percent, Crit damage, Attack, and Energy recharge. For the weapon, any 5-star will work on Venti, but Skyward Harp might slightly be better. Otherwise, any Attack percent, Crit rate, or Crit damage will work fine with Venti. Just take an interest in checking which of the crit stats he needs in attributes details. If by any chance you would have been lucky to receive an Elegy for the End in the 1.4 weapon banner, this weapon might actually be best in slot for all builds. Maybe not for DPS purposes, but it would still be a very good bow for Venti. When leveling talents on a support Venti, you don't level the basic attack. Your first priority is the burst, level this as high as you can, as fast as you can, then comes the skill to level up. As a DPS Venti, you can prioritize the basic attack over the rest, followed by the skill and then the burst. You really want your damage to come out when basic attacking, and since you don't stack energy recharge, you won't use your burst as often as your skill. There are multiple ways to customize your Venti. If you want to stack energy recharge, go for a 4 set of Exile. If you want to stack Elemental Mastery, go for a 4 set of Instructors. If you want to mix and match and get the best of both worlds, go 2-piece Exile and 2-piece Instructors. You won't go wrong either way, dependent on your actual build of course. As a DPS, you will need to go 2-piece Berserker and 2-piece Gladiators for extra crit rate and attack percentage. Be aware to equip these sets with the aforementioned substats and priorities. Veritas and Venerer 4 set is by far the best in slot for Venti. First and foremost, it increases Anemo damage, which is always welcome, but the 4 set bonus is where this shines. Swirl damage is increased by 60%, and the elemental resistance for the swirl infused element is reduced by 40%. This will boost damage in ridiculous ways. As a main DPS Venti, this will be 2 set Veritas and Venerer and 2-piece Gladiators for extra Anemo damage and attack percent. And there we have it, a fully and perfectly built Venti for all your intents and purposes. On the top right corner of the vid, you can click on the information icon to find the playlist of the character's build guides. Should the character you're looking for not be in the list at this moment, it will be in the future. So be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever a video drops. It can be your character by any chance. That would be it. Leave a like if you did like the video and dislike if you didn't. Maybe tell me why you disliked it so I can work on it if possible. Subscribe for more Genshin content coming up. This was Galaxy Brinklitchy. Have a good one.